A gunman killed 7 people before being arrested in California on Monday, just 2 days after a shooting claimed 11 lives at a popular dance hall. The latest attacks occurred at 2 separate locations in the coastal city of Half Moon Bay, about 30 miles, 50 kilometers, south of San Francisco. The attacker was identified as 67-year-old Zhao Chunli, a local resident. It comes as the state mourns the deaths in majority Asian Monterey Park during celebrations for the Lunar New Year. The suspect on Monday was filmed by news cameras turning himself in to the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office about 2 hours after the attack. The first 4 victims were discovered at a mushroom farm around 14:22 local time, 0:22 GMT, while the other 3 were later found at a nearby trucking business. Investigators have not yet provided a motive for this attack. San Mateo County Sheriff Christina Corpus said at a news conference that the suspect was arrested after driving himself to a local police station around 1640. Sweden should not expect Turkey to back its NATO membership bid, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said on Monday, days after a copy of the Quran was burned in a Stockholm protest. Sweden applied to join NATO after Russia invaded Ukraine, but needs Turkey, already a member, to approve. Kurdish protesters in Sweden hung an effigy of Mr. Erdogan this month, followed by the Quran burning. Sweden should not expect support from us for NATO, Erdogan said in response. It is clear that those who caused such a disgrace in front of our country's embassy can no longer expect any benevolence from us regarding their application. Saturday's protest, but not the burning of the book itself, was given prior approval by Swedish authorities. Eight-year-old Devanshi Sangvi could have grown up to run a multi-million-dollar diamond business. But the daughter of a wealthy Indian diamond merchant is now living a Spartan life, dressed in coarse white saris, barefoot and going door to door to seek alms. Because last week, Devanshi, the eldest of the 2 daughters of Dinesh and Amy Sangvi, renounced the world and became a nun. The Sangvis are among 4.5 million Jains who follow Jainism, one of the world's oldest religions, which originated in India more than 2,500 years ago. Religious scholars say the number of Jains renouncing the material world has been rising rapidly over the years, although cases involving children as young as Devanshi are uncommon. Billionaire Bill Gates has invested in an Australian climate technology startup that plans to reduce the methane emissions of cow burps. The Microsoft co-founder has been outspoken about the environmental impact of meat production. Methane is the most common greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide, CO2. 2. Livestock such as cows, goats, and deer produce methane when their stomachs are breaking down hard fibers like grass for digestion. This fermentation process creates methane gas, which is then mostly belched out again. University studies have shown that feeding cows seaweed could significantly cut their methane emissions. Perth-based startup Rumen8 is working on a dietary supplement, synthetically replicated from red seaweed, which stops the creation of the gas. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from Joshimath, a Himalayan town which has been slowly sinking into the ground in India. As residents waited in uncertainty, the BBC's Vineet Kari spoke to experts to understand if the town could be saved. Pushkar Singh Dhami, chief minister of Uttarakhand state where Joshimath is located, said that around 25% of the town's area had been affected by the subsidence. Joshimath, with 25,000 residents, has around 4,500 buildings spread over 2.5 square kilometers, 0.96 sq miles. More than 800 buildings have developed cracks, and authorities have been demolishing the unsafe ones. It doesn't look like the subsiding areas of Joshimath, which comprise settlements, houses and constructions, will survive, says geologist Dr. S.P. Sudhi. A Capitol Hill rioter who posed with his feet on U.S. Democrat Nancy Pelosi's desk during the attack on Congress has been found guilty of all charges. Richard Bigot Barnett was among the crowd of Trump supporters who stormed the building in attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election result. He posed for cameras after breaking into Mrs. Pelosi's office and boasted of swiping an envelope before leaving. He was armed with a stun gun and could have harmed Mrs. Pelosi, officials say. A jury in Washington, D.C. deliberated for less than 3 hours before convicting Barnett of all 8 charges against him. His crimes include obstruction of an official proceeding, entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds with a deadly weapon, and theft of government property. The U.S. Embassy and its consulates in India have launched several new initiatives to cut wait time and increase visa processing across the country. The current wait time for Indian visitors is 500 to 600 days. The U.S. mission said its services in India had been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, creating a large backlog. It affected several Indian businesses and thousands of Indians who rely on the visa to live and work in the U.S. Our consular teams across India are putting in the extra hours to meet the needs of international travelers and bring down wait times, Mumbai Consular Chief John Ballard said in a statement on the embassy website. For Indians applying for work visas, the wait time currently ranges from 60 to 280 days, while the wait time for visitors is approximately 1.5 years. The long wait time for Indian visitors is in contrast to those from European cities where it is about 20 days. I call on fathers to take the hands of their daughters and walk them to school, even if the gates are shut. Professor Ismail Mashal, who runs a private university in Kabul, says he has had enough of the restrictions women face in Afghanistan. Slender and well-dressed, he is a mixture of defiance and raw emotion. Even if they're not allowed in, they should do this daily. It's the least they can do to prove they are men, he tells me, holding back tears. This is not me being emotional, this is pain. Men must stand up and defend the rights of Afghan women and girls. In December, the Taliban government announced female students at universities would no longer be allowed back until further notice. They said they were doing this to enable them to create an Islamic learning environment aligned with Sharia law practices, including changes to the curriculum. China's northernmost city, Mohe, has recorded its lowest temperature since records began. Mohe, known as China's North Pole, is in the province of Heilongjiang, close to the Russian border. On Sunday, its local meteorological station recorded a record low temperature of -53°C, -3°F, at 7 a.m. The previous coldest temperature on record in the city was -52.3°C in 1969. However, the temperature is still shy of China's national record. The coldest temperature ever recorded in China is -58°C in the city of Zhenhe, Inner Mongolia in December 2009. The Xinhua news agency said a number of areas in the Greater Khingan Mountain Range, which spans Inner Mongolia and Heilongjiang, saw new record low temperatures over the weekend. Pakistan suffered a huge power cut early on Monday following a breakdown in its national grid, leaving millions of people without electricity. Power was out in all major centers, including the biggest city, Karachi, and the capital, Islamabad, as well as Lahore and Peshawar. Power Minister Khurram Dastagir said the grid failure followed a frequency variation in southern Pakistan. Electricity had still not been restored in many areas as night fell. Pakistan often suffers from power cuts, which are blamed on mismanagement and a lack of investment in infrastructure. The last major blackout in October took hours to restore. The Energy Ministry said that at about 7:30 local time, 2:30 Greenwich Mean Time, the grid experienced a loss of frequency that caused a major breakdown, adding that swift work was taking place to revive the system. Germany's Foreign Minister Anna Baerbock has said she would not stand in the way of Poland if it were to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Ukraine has called on the West to provide the German-made tanks which they say will help them defeat Russia. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba told that Germany had the power to save the lives of many Ukrainian soldiers. But Germany is yet to agree, and its export laws have stood in Poland's way. On Sunday, Ms. Baerbock said Poland had not yet asked for export permission. For the moment the question has not been asked, but if we were asked we would not stand in the way, she told France's LCI TV. Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said on Monday the government would request authorization from Berlin. But he said Poland would send the tanks to Ukraine, even if it was not granted. Japan's prime minister says his country is on the brink of not being able to function as a society because of its falling birth rate. Fumio Kishida said it was a case of now or never. Japan, population 125 million, is estimated to have had fewer than 800,000 births last year. In the 1970s, that figure was more than 2 million. Birth rates are slowing in many countries, including Japan's neighbors. But the issue is particularly acute in Japan as life expectancy has risen in recent decades, meaning there are a growing number of older people and a declining numbers of workers to support them. Japan now has the world's second highest proportion of people aged 65 and over, about 28% after the tiny state of Monaco, according to World Bank data. Japan is standing on the verge of whether we can continue to function as a society, Mr. Kishida told lawmakers. Sweden's prime minister has been caught up in a political row after it emerged he hired a top aide who went eel fishing illegally and misled the police about it. Ulf Kristersson has admitted he knew Peter Magnus Nielsen had broken the law before appointing him last October. The aide's behavior was stupid, but did not mean Mr. Nielsen was unsuitable for the job, the PM said. The opposition Social Democrats are calling on Mr. Nielsen to resign. The center-left party's justice spokesperson Erdogan Shekarabi told public broadcaster SVT it was unacceptable for a chief aide of the prime minister to lie to the police, given the problems we have with serious crime in Sweden. Peter Magnus Nielsen, a finance journalist turned prime ministerial aide, was appointed after Sweden's new center-right coalition government took office in October 2022, backed by a far-right party. The 26-year-old man credited with disarming the California shooting suspect had never seen a real gun before. Late on Saturday evening, working at his family-run dance hall in Alhambra, Brandon Say found himself staring at one pointed directly at him. "My heart sank. I knew I was going to die," Mr. Say told the New York Times. He did not know the gunman was believed to have killed 11 people just minutes earlier at another dance hall. Mr. Say lunged at the man and eventually disarmed him, averting another tragedy. The gunman, identified as 72-year-old Hu Can Tran, later died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in a van, according to police. The mass shooting is one of the deadliest in California's history. It began at around 22:22 local time on Saturday, 6:22 Greenwich Mean Time on Sunday, at the popular Star Ballroom Dance Studio in Monterey Park, about 7 miles, 11 kilometers, east of central Los Angeles. This is the question that everyone always asks. But before Harrison Kingston answers it, he has a caveat. There is no cheat code. However much data and brainpower Morocco's director of performance analysis pours into his laptop, it never spits out an infallible playbook. He couldn't unlock a ready-made route to goal and success when he worked at Liverpool, Tottenham Hotspur or Burnley. He didn't on Morocco's way to the World Cup semi-finals last month. If reality worked like that, you would see a lot more things happening every weekend on a pitch that looked a lot more prescribed. That I would say or show something and then it would happen. That is not really the logic of football. Football, generally, is quite chaotic. You are trying to make sense of that chaos, trying to pick up some detail that you can take advantage of. But, just sometimes, the 36-year-old can glimpse one of his details among the many moving parts.